Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you, Stephen.
All right, thank you.
Carl, we can let everybody in. Good evening. We'll go ahead and call the October 12th regular meeting of the Lakeshore Hospital Authority Board of Trustees to order. As a reminder, if you're dialed in on the telephone and you would like to speak at an appropriate time, if you press *9 on your phone, that will raise your hand and let us know that you were wanting to speak, and we can unmute you and call upon you. And then *9 to put your hand down. And then when you're called upon, you may have to press *6 to unmute your line, and then *6 again to mute it back. If you're on the Zoom application, you should see on the screen a place to raise your hand and unmute whenever you're called on. Is there any staff or trustee additions or deletions to the agenda or consent agenda?
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Staff has no requested changes to the agenda.
All right. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve to adopt the agenda.
Motion.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion by Ms. Lori, second by, I believe that was Mr. Douglas. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. Public comments. Ms. Limley, if you will unmute your mic.
What I have to say is that the authority does not need to be in the hospital business. According to the old minutes of 1986, when the authority decided they needed to get out of the business because of the associated cost. And if you guys need to follow suit and not even think about operating a hospital, there are multiple financial reasons not to. If it's a public hospital operated, you could not refuse somebody from Union County, Suwannee County, Hamilton County, and the authority would get stuck with the bill as a taxpayer, and others do not want to cover these associated costs. The authority needs to look into disposing of the outlying parcels. And as Mr. Douglas has said, the hospital is a dinosaur. And if CHS couldn't get rid of it, get rid of their lease, you guys may have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. Not going to be able to get somebody to take over a building that is in dire need of all these repairs. The first thing that needs to be done is need to get community input. It was something you, Chairman Beal, had mentioned, and it hasn't happened. And everyone's spinning their wheels until, can you hear me? It says my internet is unstable.
Yes,
until you have some community input who are footing the bills.
And just to speak on that, Ms. Limley, as we've discussed in previous meetings, the plan is definitely to have community input. We don't want to put the cart before the horse, though. We want to see what options we have available before we get community input, because if the community wants service X and we don't have anybody that's proposing that could offer service X, what are we to do? I mean, if we have proposers that are proposing to offer services Y and Z, then the community knows what our options are, and they can choose from that and get input from that. So just to be on the record, I want to make it clear that the plan is still to get community input.
Well, why can't it be done at this very time? You know, the purpose is to operate hospitals. The authority is to indigent care. And if they want a birthing center, having children is not indigent care. That is something of a totally different realm.
Okay. However, if we don't know what the options are. So again, we don't want to put the cart before the horse. We've discussed this in multiple meetings. I don't want to continue spinning the wheel and saying it again and again and again, but that's the idea, is to know what options we have to present to the public to get their feedback and their input on.
Well, the public may want something, but I'm footing the bill, you're footing the bill. Maybe the people who are footing the bill need to have input of what they want to spend, not exactly what the community wants, those that are paying taxpayer dollars. You guys of 4 members are making a determination because there are 3 empty spots. I would not want it on my watch that I squandered taxpayer monies. You're here to be a good steward of the finances. You know, you're going to get this money from CHS, but back to the bottom line is when the authority decided to get out of the business is because they were going to have to ask the county for money to operate 3 mills. Doesn't seem like a lot of money when it comes to operating a hospital. Consider when CHS wanted to have a new ER and that was going to cost $7 million. And if CHS couldn't unload this parcel, I don't think you guys are going to be able to unload it on anybody.
Thank you, Ms. Limley. Is there any other public comments? Seeing no more hands raised. So we will move on to approval of the consent agenda, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by Dr. Thompson, a second by Ms. Chancey. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. Got no unfinished business tonight. New business, approval of proclamations covering the period of September 17th.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. Hello.
Yes, Stu.
Hey, Leslie.
Thank you very much. Sorry, it's maybe you guys should put the phone number on the home page of the web page, so having to search through the agendas for these. I listened to Ms. Lumley's remarks, and I don't understand why you have not had any, and I have not spoken about this, although I did speak with you about it. I don't understand why you have not had any community forums. The one community forum was preposterous. You had that at the Richardson Community Center, and that was misreported in the local news media, the print media, that said that the hospital authority arranged it. That was not arranged. So the fact is that you did have input, but not everybody knew about it. And the point is this, and this is what I don't understand, that you feel you have to go out and get all the options. If the majority of people in Columbia County don't believe that the Lakeshore Hospital Authority should be in the hospital business, I'm not exactly sure, and maybe you could explain this, Mr. Chairman, what business you have going out and asking for people to run the hospital when the community does not back that proposal. If 3 people in the community back that proposal, that's not the community backing the proposal. That's 3 people on the governor's board. The second thing is this, something that I brought up time and time again, is the billing by Attorney Koberline. I'm not sure by looking at this which of the Koberlines is on the line tonight, whether it's senior or junior or some sort of shadow Koberline that uses the same initials. But the authority continues with no public purpose to advertise for the Coberline law firm, at least they have recently, that's against the Florida statutes and against the Florida Constitution. The people should not have to pay to have advertising for the Fred Coberline law firm. And finally, I don't know if anybody on that board looks at the Coberline billing. That's sort of like vague. It doesn't meet the requirements of what billing should be. Remarks like forwarded information to the appropriate people when nobody knows who the appropriate people are is just ridiculous and a total insult to the public. And I'd like to know why the board continues to allow that to happen. And that's you guys. And the final thing is this. My understanding is that Stephen Douglas, and he's a board member, is also in the business of buildings. So considering that you only have 4 people there, and without another person to vote, you can't vote on anything, if Mr. Douglas is involved in rating or ranking or doing anything to anybody else on any hospital authority building and is dealing with those people on a business level, then clearly he's conflicted according to Florida statutes and cannot vote on anything that has to do with that. And that's my comments, and I thank you for your time, and maybe we can get some answers. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, on the first order of new business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item would be to adopt and approve the proclamations which you issued from September 17th through October 15th, which restated the resolution number 2020-004, the state of emergency. We would ask your approval.
Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the proclamations.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Seconded.
Got a motion by Mr. Douglas, a second by
Dr. Thompson.
Dr. Thompson. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. Item number 2, Mr. Williams.
The governor did issue a new executive order, and in accordance with that executive order, we must now adopt a new state of emergency which provides for those changes. That would be in resolution number 2020-011, and we would ask your approval.
I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve resolution 2020-011.
Got a motion by Dr. Thompson,
Second.
second by Mr. Douglas. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. Moving on to the organizational meeting portion.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, as you stated, this is the trustees organizational meeting. We need to elect a new slate of officers. Also, we need to approve the meeting schedule for 2021. And while it's not on the agenda, this would also be the appropriate time if anybody wanted to entertain changes in meeting dates or times or locations. So having said that, Mr. Chairman, I think the election of officers would be first. And speaking for the chair, he did indicate to me, trustees, that if it was your wishes, he would be willing to serve another year as chair.
We'll open the floor to nominations for, we'll go in order for chairman.
And did you say you'd be willing to serve again? This is Dr. Thompson. You'd be willing to serve again as chairman?
I would be willing to, yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate Brandon for chair.
Second.
You've got a nomination for Brandon Bill for chair and a second. Are there any other nominations first? All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. We'll move on and for nomination for the seat of vice chair, who Dr. Thompson assumed at last month's meeting.
Well, let's nominate.
Is that a nomination for Dr. Thompson for vice chair? And I will second that. Dr. Thompson, are you?
Accept.
All right. Got a nomination and a second for Dr. Thompson as vice chair. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. And for the seat of secretary treasurer, currently held by Ms. Chansey.
I'd like to nominate Lori for that position if she's willing to.
I'll second that.
Ms. Chansey, do you accept that nomination?
I do.
Got a motion or a nomination and a second. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. We'll move on to the meeting schedule. Mr. Williams, have we looked at the second Monday of each month to make sure it doesn't conflict with a national holiday?
We did, and it's my understanding we have no conflicts in 2021.
Do we have a listing that has those dates?
Should be one in your agenda packet. Yes, sir.
Does anybody see any issues with those meeting dates for 2021 calendar year? Or fiscal year, I'm sorry.
The only question I have, Veterans Day is not a movable holiday, is it?
It's the 11th.
I know it's the 11th, but we've taken so many holidays and moved them to a Monday. But Veterans Day is not a movable holiday, is it?
That's correct.
Okay, then we're fine.
Okay, we will need a motion to approve the 2021 meeting schedule.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by Dr. Thompson, a second by Mr. Douglas. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, that motion carries. Mr. Williams, the update and discussion on the transfer of operations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, this is for discussion. There's no action required on the part of the trustees, but it gives me a chance to update everyone. And I will reduce this to writing and get it to you just as soon as possible. Number one, I think it's important for the trustees who may not know, and certainly for those who are listening, to know that we have received the $7.5 million lease payout that was received. It was wired to the authority's operating account, and it was wired to that account because that is lease payment money. From the operating account, it was transferred to Ameris Bank. It was placed in a 6-month CD, and we chose Ameris by getting telephonic quotes of interest rates being paid. And so we simply selected the one offering the highest CD rate for a 6-month period. So the $7.5 million has been received, and I want to make sure that everyone knows that. At the last meeting, you approved an overall budget not to exceed.
I'd like to comment on that.
Whenever he's done with his presentation with this one,
Thank you.
We'll allow a comment.
Thank you.
Okay. At the last meeting, the board authorized a monthly allowance in order to pay for transferring costs and associated and related costs to the hospital, where we could keep it in an operable state. And so what we have done since that time is we have transferred all the city utility accounts that were in the name of CHS to the authority. There were 8 water and sewer meters and 2 gas meters. We did not have to pay a deposit with the city of Lake City. The city of Lake City waived the deposit. We transferred the light bill, which FP&L is the energy carrier, from CHS to Lakeshore Hospital Authority. There was 17 total meters involved in that. We did request a waiver of the deposit. That waiver was denied. FP&L said they had no authority to waive such a deposit. The deposit amount was $63,972. And so in lieu of putting up a cash deposit, we put up a bank letter of credit, which was issued in lieu of. The bank letter of credit cost the authority $300 for the first year. So we did not actually put a cash deposit up. We put a bank letter of credit, but we have transferred the accounts. AT&T, which is the phone service provider, we have not completely transferred that yet. We are waiting on an agreement to do so, and we are working on that. The contracts for building security, grounds maintenance, and pest control, we have continued with those companies. They all have 30-day cancellation provisions, but building security is the same contractor that CHS had, which is DSL. Grounds maintenance is Stonegate Management, and the pest control is through Live Oak Pest Control. So those are continuing with no interruptions. There's a number of service agreements that we're transferring. Elevators, which is through ThyssenKrupp. We will continue to do the periodic elevator inspections as required by code. Water treatment, and we're not speaking of drinking water here. We're speaking of descale, which goes into the chilling units. That is being done through Premier Water and Energy. Fire sprinklers, fire sprinkler maintenance through WW Gay. The fire alarm inspection and monitoring, Johnson Controls. Chiller inspections through Johnson's Controls, and boiler inspection through Illingsworth Boiler. All of those are the existing service contractors that CHS used, and we're going to continue with the same vendor. We have placed insurance on the building. You have general liability, property and casualty, and boiler that has been placed and bound. The elevator and boiler coverage was included in the base policy, so we do not have to have separate policies for those risks. The underground storage tank, which is located at the hospital, is a secondary risk, so it requires a separate policy. We have applied for that. All of these coverages we place through the Florida Municipal Insurance Trust, of which we as an authority are a member. We are in the process of retaining or will retain 6 employees. All of these are current or were former employees of CHS. 3 will be in the facilities area, 2 in the IT area, and 1 in general. I don't know that all of these have been completed as of tonight, but we are working to place them in our payroll. They will be placed there. Full-time temporary employees, which basically means they're full-time, but they're not to exceed 6 months employment. And then, of course, what I see as being left, we have 3 vehicles that are being transferred from CHS to the authority. We have to, of course, have those titles transferred. We have not completed that. And there's also a property at the end of Laguna Drive, just on the north end of Laguna Drive, which the authority, I guess, from what I'm told, asked the CHS to purchase in their behalf some years ago. I'm trying to find out what it would take to transfer that property to the authority. So we do have those, and we're working on those. But the transfer is going well. We have not had any interruptions in services. Nobody, of course, has turned any lights, power, water, sewer off. That went pretty smooth. And, we're just dealing with the day-to-day issues now. So if the trustees have any questions about that, I'll be glad to answer them.
Mr. Director, Dale?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Thompson, I know the answer to this, but I want to be clear so that there's not a headline in tomorrow's paper that says Lakeshore Authority Board votes to transfer operations of Lakeshore Hospital to the Authority Board, because that's really not what's happening at all. So can you just clarify in a statement that we're basically transferring to the Authority Board the ability to maintain the physical plant so that it does not deteriorate until we're able to find an appropriate use or determine what to do with the building? Is that correct?
That is correct. And I will clarify to make sure, Dr. Thompson. When I say operations, it means to basically take the facility and keep it in a state of repair where a party could occupy it and it would be ready for use.
Thank you.
It has nothing to do at this moment in time with the authority operating anything directly.
Thank you for that clarification. I think it was important.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Chancey, did you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. Did you recognize me? I was looking at the phone.
I
Mr.
was
Beal?
going to let Ms. Chancey and then Mr. Douglas speak, and then I was going to call.
No, that's fine. Let me mute myself then.
I have no comments at this time.
Okay. Mr. Douglas, questions, comments?
Just to second what Dr. Thompson said, just to let everybody know that we're doing this to make sure that the building's going to stay in an operable, usable, and/or transferable state. That's it.
Mr. Lilker?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I got a couple things. Being you don't have to vote on anything anymore and you don't get anything in writing, doesn't the board have to approve the hiring of 6 full-time employees? And I'm not exactly sure why there are 6 full-time employees. Maybe 4 could do it or 3 could do it. So I think that needs to be explained and you need things in writing. Regarding the property on Laguna Drive, I was following and writing about the hospital authority at that time. I don't recall that CHS ever bought that at the behest of the Lakeshore Hospital Authority. CHS bought that because of the deal that they were working on the Jack Berry Highway. And once that fell through, then apparently CHS had no more use for that home. Well, they can sell it or do whatever they want, but I think you're going to have to find something in the minutes that says that the hospital authority bought that on the behest, that CHS bought that on the behest of the Lakeshore Hospital Authority. And finally, you guys used to put out, and the board would approve, the CDs and whatnot. I don't know what the purchasing policy says right now because I'm not looking at it, but I believe Mr. Williams mentioned somewhere around $7 million, and you're doing this by phone quotes and you call yourselves responsible. I mean, if you're going to invest $7 million, I know if I am, I'm going to get written quotes, or at least something, if I was in the position of a board member, that the board could look at. Yet the 4 of you just sit there and do nothing as Mr. Williams runs the thing off a steno pad or whatever he does. He's allowed, if you allow him to do that, you can't blame Mr. Williams. But apparently nothing has changed from the days of Manager Berry, and it may even be worse now, where you guys just get nothing in writing and go along your merry way. So I think you need to look into that. That's the 6 employees, that you need to approve the hiring of 6 employees without even seeing anything or any kind of plan, that you need to see that the board, that the truth of the statement that Dale Williams made, that he understands. I don't know what he understands. I mean, you got the only way you understand it is to read it, which is what you guys don't write anything down anymore. To see it in the minutes that the board talked CHS into buying that property, that you will. And finally, regarding the $7 million that you put in the bank with verbal quotes on the phone, that's just ridiculous. And I don't know, maybe you could explain to me, Mr. Beal, and the rest of the board members, how that's responsible not to get any of those in writing. Thank you very much.
Ms. Limley? You have to unmute yourself, Ms. Limley.
I'm glad Stu brought this up. I recognized me and allowed me to speak. These employees, can they, they'll have to be put under the FRS?
No, ma'am, that's why they are considered full-time temporary, not to exceed the 6 months. Is that correct, Mr. Williams?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And how much are these 6 employees going to cost per month?
I know that Mr. Williams has met with the former department heads from CHS, and Dell, if you would like to speak on it. And I know that he also said at the beginning of this topic that it was coming in writing, but he wanted to give us a verbal update tonight. But I know that he went through a process and many discussions. So, Mr. Williams, if you would like to, you can comment on this. Okay. I'm just letting Mr. Williams know that if he would like to comment, he's allowed to. If he would like to, he's not required. Go ahead, Ms. Limley.
Be more than glad to. Of the employees I am retaining to assist with keeping the hospital facility open, maintained, occupiable, ready to transfer, whatever you may decide to do with it. I hired those people at the same hourly wage that they were making with CHS. However, they did not receive the same benefit package. The benefits they received were exactly those that are within the policy of the authority. So there is no medical plan, for example, because the authority does not provide for one. So they are maintaining their salary, but they are not maintaining their benefit package. And once again, I had no choice but to hire these as full-time temporary employees simply because of the FRS issue.
Ms. Limley?
Yes, Dale mentioned Stonegate was going to be doing the lawn maintenance.
Yes.
Is that the same firm that does the authority lawn maintenance?
No.
And that rolls over to the other question. What's the status of the transfer of the authority property to the city? Because there was a contract for mowing, but if the authority is going to turn it over to the city, can't the city pick up that cost that we've already given a contract for?
Yes, and that has been recently mentioned along with the water accounts that's there for irrigation. Ms. Limley, the last I heard about the transfer is there was some issue come up which a release from some party was needed in order to get clear title. I do not know the status of that. I do know the city was working on it. And so we are waiting on the city. As soon as they tell me that everything is ready to be transferred, then we will proceed.
Well, at that time, will the contract be voided?
I'm sorry.
The contract with the lawn mowing people, when it's actually transferred to the city, contract be voided, or will the authority be stuck with, the contract still for property they don't own?
The authority will continue to use the same company because it has other properties. We will eliminate those parcels that we are transferring. And if you look at the contract, there is a per lot amount. So it's easy to make the adjustment. But no, we have no intentions to continue to pay to maintain the lots once transferred.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, can I comment on the two other things?
Yes, sir.
One was the 7.5 million. I wish to remind the trustees that we just recently went through a bid process and a selection process as it related to financials. That was just, a little over a year ago. And if you look at the state recommendations as to how we are to handle our finances, I think you will find that obtaining quotes for a 6-month rate, and these quotes list the name of the individual who gave the quote, as well as the amount, is perfectly in line with proper procedure. Had we not recently went through a bid process and had we simply placed this with our existing bank, I could better understand the argument. But I do not think that this wavered from good financial policy. And I've seen it done in much, much larger governmental entities the very same way. So I wish to make that point.
Okay. Any other questions that?
Mr. Beal, I'd like to ask a question.
Okay.
This is Sandra Buckamp. Mr. Williams, what has happened to the medications and the drugs in the pharmacy in the hospital? I'm particularly concerned about the controlled substances.
Yeah,
because there is a horrible problem throughout the state with drug diversion, and a vacant hospital is just prime for theft and other problems.
it is my understanding, Ms. Buckamp, that under their licensure, those medications and all were removed as part of their requirements for terminating their license at that facility.
Have you or one of your staff inspected to make sure that that was so?
No, not yet. In fact, that's part of the reason that some of the things the staff will be doing is doing exactly that. Plus, we have to build a fixed asset inventory. We do not have one. So a lot of work yet to be done there.
Would you make the drugs your top priority just for safety features? Because every unit would have medications as well as the pharmacy itself.
I will, and thank you for the comment. I'll be more than happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buckamp. And the final order of business tonight, the discussion and possible action of the gubernatorial executive order 20-246. Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, as we mentioned earlier, a new gubernatorial executive order was issued. And effective November 1st, the governor has basically turned public meetings back to in-person meetings. And in-person meetings may have a little bit of a different meaning than they did prior to, but nonetheless, it pretty much means what it says. It's my understanding that in-person now means that at least a majority of the governing board must be present at the meeting in person. Well, for the authority, that obviously means each and every one of you must be present and in person because we only have a quorum. We do not have 3 additional members. So you should expect, effective at our next regular schedule meeting, to be present for our authority meeting. And we have no exemption for that any longer under the gubernatorial order. Now, having said that, what I really wanted to discuss with the trustees is the organization of that meeting. I do not know how or what your feelings are as they relate to, are you going to require that masks be worn? And I'm not even sure that you can require that, or that social distancing must be maintained. Those are questions that I need to kind of get some feedback on. I think it's important for you to understand and know that these meetings will continue to be streamed, where people who are not physically able or they cannot come to the meeting will be able to participate virtually. So we will still have a process for people who, either because of concern for their personal safety or the fact that they don't maybe want to, infect others, or they have some other reason they couldn't attend a meeting, will be able to do so remotely. So a lot of changes, at least in what you don't see in terms of our future meetings. But your next regular scheduled meeting, unless something happens between now and then, is going to be in person. And of course, I think it's pretty easy for us to maintain some good personal practices as it relates to COVID with 4 members of the board and a staff. But we have the public and we have those issues. So I kind of needed some feedback as to what you think, where we can start making arrangements to accommodate for our next meeting.
What I would like to do is we'll go around and hear from each trustee, and if everybody's okay, I'll kind of give my thoughts and input to start it off with. Mr. Williams, I think I agree that we need to be responsible. I also think that we need to ensure that we allow public participation going forward, even beyond COVID-19. I like the idea of allowing public participation virtually. Hopefully that'll get more people involved in what the hospital authority is doing. But I would like to ensure that happens as well as in person. And then I would also like for staff to start researching and looking for a venue that maybe we could have a little more space, whether it be a conference room upstairs, the top of our building, over at the hospital building, the school board auditorium, maybe some different options to look at and see what options are available to us so we can at least practice social distancing. Those are my thoughts. Ms. Chancey, we'll go to you next.
If we didn't have to have participation of people, the present boardroom would be acceptable because we can get social distancing there. However, I believe that in order to accommodate the public, we need to think about moving upstairs. We've got a room large enough that we could do social distancing there and keep all of the meeting accessories due to virtual meetings, et cetera, we could keep all of those accessories within our own facility. The room upstairs would be plenty big enough. It would just be awkward at first, as with any move, but I think it's quite plausible to say that we could accomplish the meetings upstairs. And as far as social distancing and mask wearing for the people that are attending, I think that should be optional. I do not believe that I have the right to demand that someone wear a mask. I have no idea. Some people cannot breathe with them well. Others just don't want to wear them. And social distancing, I don't know which people have spent time together already. And if they have, they don't need to social distance. They may live in the same house. Who am I to say, even though I don't know who you are, you will sit 6 feet apart from somebody? I think social distancing and masks should be optional no matter where we go.
Dr. Thompson.
What was the recommendation of the governor and his healthcare, team in regards to opening up meetings to in person? Did they make any comments on what is required or recommended, or did they say it's up to each individual board member or board? Do you know?
Dr. Thompson, the way I read it is that those are left to local jurisdictions.
Yeah, I would just say try to get some information on that, because as a physician, I've seen people with COVID-19 with sniffles, and basically just a little nothing, and then I've seen people on ventilators and die. So it certainly runs the spectrum. I just think of a situation, if you obviously want to wear a mask and you're at risk, over 60 years of age, have any pre-existing conditions, you may want to consider that. I think the other thing is we don't want anybody sneaking into a meeting who's had fever or has been exposed to COVID-19 and somebody is unaware that they're sitting next to them, So I think there should be some kind of screening process. So I agree with Lori in the sense that, we can't tell other people what to do, but I hope everybody would realize that this is still something to be taken seriously. It does run the gamut in certain age groups from almost nothing to people dying on ventilators, which is real. So, we just have to be cautious. I heard Brandon say something about, maybe looking at an area such as a school auditorium or something where we could be more distance if somebody felt that was necessary, and also have more public input. I do agree that that's important, but I just want to caution everybody that we're still not out of the woods on this one. There's vaccines are coming; they're not here yet. And it runs the gamut, So you don't want to be lulled into a false sense of comfort, because it is real. But it does run the gamut of no symptoms to people dying. So I think we just got to be cautious. And if somebody wants, like personally, I'd probably wear a mask, just because I'm over age 60 and, I'm around a lot of other patients as I work throughout the day. So I don't want to increase my risk of exposure. And if I would ask somebody not to sit next to me, please distance themselves. Please don't be offended. You know what I mean? I'm doing it to protect other people that I work around on a daily basis. So, I would probably request that for myself, being an oncologist and working around people who are immunocompromised. So I guess that's all I got to say.
And back to the larger meeting space that I mentioned also, I think another reason I didn't clarify, but I feel in the next few months, we probably will have increased attendance and interest as we move forward and go through the process of vetting the proposers and getting community input on what the future of Lakeshore Hospital will be. So even if we have our regular meetings and then maybe we have an alternate meeting space for anticipated high attendance meetings as well, as I'm sure that we will have some of those in the near future. Mr. Douglas, your thoughts?
As long as we got the meetings still broadcasting virtually, I think that's really the only thing that I was kind of curious about to see, regardless of what happens with the pandemic or what have you. As long as we can get these things continually broadcast virtually, I think that's just. Other than that, I'm fine meeting there. I don't have a whole lot of concern about it. As long as we can just get the thing out virtual, that way the people that are at risk can choose to come or not come, but they can still take part in the meeting. So as long as we can keep the virtual thing alive, I say that's what we do. We just run with that.
Mr. Williams, did you get enough input to?
I did, Mr. Chairman. As soon as we have some details as to how we can make all of this happen, I'll certainly make you aware.
I know you'll be in contact with Carl and the IT staff to make sure that we can make the virtual part of it continue as well. And that's something else. I just want to mention that it's more than just finding a room that'll accommodate social distancing. So Mr. Williams is staying busy for sure.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
that is one of the reasons that I suggested going upstairs, because everything remains in-house. It does not have to be disassembled and then reassembled. And it's only our people that have their hands on the technical end of it.
Right.
Now, also upstairs, there is that second room, the adjoining room, that could be used for any overflow. I think what we need to do is maybe a couple of us go upstairs and figure out how to space something like that. And then we would have more information for our next meeting.
Okay.
That makes sense.
All right. Anything else on this item? All right, your staff report is included in your agenda. Board member comments. We'll go backwards this time. Mr. Douglas.
I'm sorry, I don't have any comments today.
All right. Dr. Thompson.
Just a few comments perhaps, and this, I don't know if there's a lot of people listening or not, but Barbara's comments were heard, Stu's comments were heard, and just so people know that when CHS, left, as they had a right to do, obviously, but they did not leave a playbook behind. And so there was a learning gap that we have to go through to gather a lot of information to do this correctly, to be responsible with the citizens' money, et cetera. And so, once we understand Humpty Dumpty and Humpty Dumpty's broken and we got to put the pieces together, then we got to make some good decisions as what's the best thing to do. And it certainly runs the gamut from raising the building to running the hospital to repurposing and everything in between. So, all those things will be considered, and but there's a lot of information that I know our chairman, our executive director has been gathering, working very hard, and Brandon, yourself as well. So, we're not doing nothing by any means, but there's a process that we have to go through. We want to do this process carefully. We do want to consider, people's thoughts and feelings, but also we have to do the right thing with the citizens' money. And, Barbara made a comment that the authority board does not have to be in the hospital business to fulfill its mission. That has been echoed, and I hear that very, very loudly, and that's also a consideration. And so everything's going to be on the table. So I want people to be assured of that. I don't want to give any false hopes or promises, but we are going to look at everything very carefully, very efficiently, and in a very timely manner, because we can't afford to let a building be on life support for a long period of time. It's going to further deteriorate. And there are a lot of things that will need to be done to that building if it's going to be repurposed or reused. So that's just my comment. The board this is probably the most active the board and chairman and executive director have been. I mean, this is a high intensity time when we don't have it occupied. So it is being looked at and everything is being considered carefully, and we're not going to waste time, but we want to do it right. And we're all committed to that. I know that for a fact. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Ms. Chancey.
I'd like to make a comment that we need to make the public aware that we still have our program for indigent care. And this last month, There were absolutely no new applications. I think people are misguided. They thought that our program for indigent care was only attached to the hospital, and not realizing that we provide for indigent care through the hospital authority, and that we still have physicians for these people to see, and we still have a pharmacy program where we assist these people. And, you know, I noticed that our numbers are going down on that. People talk about indigent care, but we need to get the word out that we still are assisting in indigent care. That money is not just sitting there for no reason whatsoever. I would like very much to see all our eggs come together in the same basket, but obviously they're not going to for quite a while. I'm very upset about that, but that's the way things go sometimes. But I want the people to know that we still have some things that we can help them out with.
Absolutely. That it for you, Ms. Chancey, tonight? All right. Speaking off the cuff tonight, I thought about it the past couple meetings and just wanted to bring it up tonight. And Mr. Williams may tell me that I'm crazy and it's not necessary. But I would like for us to maybe discuss at the next meeting, looking at the contract we have with Mr. Williams. I know he's a part-time employee, and with everything that's going on at the hospital and with the authority and the hospital building, I know that I call him a lot more now than I have previously. I'm not sure if others do as well. I would imagine they do. So I just want to make sure that we are allowing him to fulfill his duties and with the allotted time that may be necessary. He may have no problems doing it the way his contract states currently, but I think we need to look at that anyways and make sure that we are allowing him the hours necessary to make sure this process is continuing. Again, I'm not saying that I don't think that anything's being left out by any means, but I want to make sure that he is being compensated for the many hours and hard work that he's putting in during this process. So maybe we can discuss that at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
The other comment is that Miss Limley brings a cooler of those drinks with her to the next meeting. And with that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Douglas.